Hello everyone and welcome to a very difficult and very complicated game from round 7 of this year's GRENKE Freestyle Chess Open. You guys requested it as soon as it happened. It is Magnus Carlsen, the undefeated one, versus Parham Maghsoodloo, also undefeated, but he did get that one draw in round 2. In the previous round, Parham defeated Leon Luke Mendonça, who's been on an incredible run. He defeated Rapport, he defeated Nepomniachtchi, and Parham put a stop to him. And now Parham gets to play Magnus with the black pieces. This is the position. So fairly standard one. I don't know, now that I watch it pretty much every game, very few positions are that surprising. I mean, all of them are scrambled, and yeah, you just get used to it, I guess. But yeah, let's check it out and see what Magnus does. So the engine's recommendation here is to go either pawn to e4 or pawn to f4 or pawn to c3, which is, definitely makes sense. With e4, you open up the queen. With the f pawn, you push the pawn in front of the queen and you open up the dark square bishop. And the c pawn makes sense as you open up the light square bishop. Magnus, I think this is sort of a theme in all of the games, starts by opening up the light square bishop. Plays pawn to c3, one of the engine's top recommendations, and Parham replies with pawn to e5. He opens up his queen. We have pawn to f4. Magnus challenges the pawn right away. We have e captures on f4, sort of a chess 960 king's gambit, and knight to d3 goes after the pawn. If you go after the pawn right away, it can be played, but this is something that you have to make sure you don't blunder if you try, playing yourself. You might be thinking, okay, c6, we attack the queen, but the bishop is undefended on b8. There is no rook on a8, and it's a it's a mistake that you could easily make. So here we have knight to d3, saying, okay, I might capture with the queen, I might capture with the knight. Parham goes pawn to c6, and Magnus castles queen side. We have pawn to d5, knight to d6. Is sort of the strongest idea, followed by pawn to f5, but it's just very unnatural to play this. You put the knight in front of the pawn and in front of the bishop. It makes much more sense to play pawn to d5 right away, but this puts Parham in a very difficult situation. Magnus goes knight to b3, we have knight to d6, and now queen captures on f4. We have queen to e7, and bishop to c5 by Magnus. You might think, okay, are there any discoveries here with this knight? Well, there just aren't any. Wherever you put the knight, even though the bishop is now defended, there just aren't any good squares. If you go something like knight to e4, you can just move the queen, and nothing spectacular happening here. So after queen captures on f4, we have queen to e7, and now bishop to c5. Magnus pins the knight. We have knight to b6 and knight to d4. We have pawn to g6, as if you allow knight to f5, it's basically game over. There's an attack on the queen, and there will be a triple attack on the knight. You might be able to hold on a little bit longer, but it's going to be unnecessary at least. So g6, Parham stops that, and knight to e5 by Magnus. Sort of inviting pawn to f6, but it doesn't really matter if you go knight to d7 to challenge the knight, or pawn to f6, the move Parham played. Magnus's reply will be the same, even though knight to d7 seems like a bit of a sturdier defense. Pawn to f6 by Parham, and now we reach the position from the thumbnail. Magnus says knight e captures on c6. He sacrifices a knight, goes after the queen and the rook, and he's saying, okay, I will grab those two pawns, and I will give you the two knights for the rook on d8. So let's see what happens. B captures, knight captures on c6, again with the fork, the rook and queen are attacked. Queen to c7 by Parham, and now Magnus played queen to e3 with check. Interestingly, the position is incredibly complicated, and the best for white here is not even to capture the rook, it's actually to capture the bishop. Point being that now, queen captures on c5, you will play knight to e6, attack the queen, and the point of it all is that the pawn on f6 is hanging as well. So once you deal with the queen being attacked, you attack the knight. Queen captures on f6, attacks the rook, and after queen captures on a6, you even play rook to f1, and there's just a lot of pressure on that black king. White is the one playing for the win here. What would happen? who knows? But after queen to c7, Magnus played queen to e3 check, and here Parham can actually get a very, very nice position with knight to e4. It wasn't played in the game. I will show it because, well, it's just a lot of fun. Bishop captures on e4, d captures, and now if knight captures on d8, you play bishop captures on a2. And it's a pretty wild position. Rook comes to f1, puts pressure on the f6 pawn, and many ideas can be played here. Queen captures on e4 is an idea. Rook captures on f6 is an idea. So quite a complicated position. So after queen to e3, Parham played king to d7. Now comes knight captures on d8, queen captures, and pawn to h4. Magnus wants to continue advancing that h-pawn up the board, capture on g6, open up the rook. We have bishop to e6 by Parham, now connecting the queen and the rook, and pawn to h5. Parham keeps the h file closed, pawn to g5, rook h to f1, and now knight d to c4. Attacking the queen, being very annoying here. The other knight is coming to a4 with an attack on b2 and the bishop, and b2 is undefended. So Magnus has to be very, very careful here. He plays queen f2, which puts more pressure on that f6 pawn, so the queen needs to be careful. Knight to a4. Now attacking the b2 pawn and the bishop, and Magnus goes for bishop to f5. And there are so many really awesome lines here, and what would you play here? I mean, it's a pretty crazy position. So the move that has to be played is not knight captures on b2. It's actually knight captures on c5. I'm going to show it to you. Knight captures, queen captures, and now queen to b6. You trade queens, and that's pretty much it. There's no avoiding this, and after queen captures, a captures, you get a position like this, and it's perfectly fine. But after bishop to f5, there's also knight a captures on b2. So apologies for that. Knight a captures on b2, but this wouldn't be all that impressive, as you can just go bishop captures on e6, and after king captures, queen to f5 check, king to f7, and now bishop to d4. And this is, well, a big problem here. If knight captures on d1, you're just going to play bishop captures on f6, and that's it. Your entire position falls apart. Now material starts falling with checks. The knight on d1 will be lost as well. This is dead lost for black. But after bishop to f5, Parham played bishop to f4, and now Magnus threw in a queen to d4. G3 also a possibility. We can even show that one. It's probably why Parham played it, but we cannot know for sure. If g3, now bishop can be captured, you will capture the dark square bishop, and now after knight a captures on b2 and queen to d4, putting pressure on f6, putting pressure on d5, there's bishop to e4. Guarding the d5 pawn, now f captures on g5, and after knight captures on d1, rook captures on f6, you're going to capture the knight as well. It's a pretty wild position. Where only white can play for the win, but with two knights with the bishop on e4, anything can happen, obviously. So after bishop to f4, Magnus played queen to d4, and now we have king to c6, and this is where Parham missed it. With 6 minutes on the clock, he missed knight captures on c5, and it's just it's an easy move to miss, because after knight to d6, sorry, not knight to d6, after queen captures on d5, as the bishop here is pinned, knight to d6, and well, the bishop is attacked twice. For example, queen captures on c5, knight captures on f5. Yes, you do have a queen. There's a sort of a bare naked king on d7, but you don't have rooks to get into the game. Even with best possible play, this would be only, slightly worse for white. So you can play it, but it would be difficult. If you can start getting those pawns on up the board, could be even dangerous. But yeah, was not an easy decision, and not easy to spot for Parham with 6 minutes on the clock. So after queen to d4, he played king to c6, and now Magnus is back in the driving seat. He plays bishop captures on e6, Parham plays knight captures on c5, and now rook captures on f4. You could also start with bishop captures on d5. Doesn't really matter. G captures on f4, bishop captures on d5 with check, queen captures, and queen captures on f6, nicely connecting the king and the rook on h8, knight to d6 blocking, and queen captures on h8. Parham finally captures on a2, and Magnus just strikes with pawn to d4. We have knight to b3 check, king to c2, and now queen to a4, threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries. Magnus plays pawn to d5 check, and this is why chess is such an amazing game and why we love analyzing games. If you had this position, a minute 41 on the clock, and you see, okay, if I go up the board, Magnus captures on h7 with check, so obviously I'm not playing that. Parham played king to c5, but it is exactly this king to c5 move that is the problem for Parham, because Magnus still captures on h7, and there are no good discoveries. And capturing on h7, it's not that you go after a pawn. You don't really care about this pawn. It is a nice pawn because it also creates a passed h pawn. But the key behind queen captures on h7 is that Parham was banking a knight to d4 double check. And then, okay, Magnus goes to d2, capture on c2, cannot go to e3, you go to e1, and then queen captures on e2 is checkmate. Simple as that. The problem is, when Magnus played queen captures on h7, the queen also defends the c2 square. So once you play king d2, there is no queen to c2 check. This is guarded. So that is a problem. Parham now played king to b6, and Magnus played queen to g6. The only move that allows Magnus to play for the win. Stops knight to c4 and prepares to advance the h-pawn to victory. King to c7, because there still aren't any good discoveries. We have pawn to h6, and now finally knight to d4 check, where you could again go wrong, but Magnus doesn't. Magnus actually plays king to c1. Parham's idea was if king to d2 is played, he had this hidden resource of knight to e4 check, where you either go into a worse position and lose, or you accept the knight, but now knight to b3 check opens up a discovery on the queen. And if you go king to d3 to defend the queen, then knight to c5 check with a beautiful royal fork, you lose. And if you go king to c2, which is your only move, then queen captures queen, king captures knight, and it's still not winning even though you're down a queen. With so many pawns, and once those pawns start marching up the board, you will have resources to draw this game. But yeah, after knight to d4 check, Magnus said, of course, I'm not playing that, king to c1, and he was in this position on move 31 that Parham did not resign. He actually lost on time, and I don't even think he played the best move in the position. I think he played a suboptimal move. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter, of course, as you know, Magnus gets the full point either way, but I will show you what happens and what a complicated position it is had Parham continued in the best possible way with queen to a1 check. It is the only move that doesn't lose on the spot. So let's show it. Queen to b1 blocking, knight to b3 check, king to c2, and now after queen to a4, again with this threat of discovery that doesn't work, you would get this position where it's a dead draw unless Magnus finds rook to d3, which, you know, to me, to you, to your uncle and your grandma makes zero sense to play. But, you know, Magnus is Magnus. He's on 7 out of 7 against these monsters. He would probably find rook to d3. I have no idea. But okay, rook to d3, and then, okay, it's still not over. Knight to e4, king to d1, knight b to c5, a nice check. So you go to b3, you attack the black queen. Now knight to f2 check, nicely connecting with the rook again. King to c2, now defending on b3 twice, and queen to e4, pinning the rook again. Queen to f1, adding a defender to d3, and now let's say knight captures, pawn captures, and now, believe it or not, even though you're up a piece, the only move that doesn't lose for black here is giving back the piece for this d3 pawn. And after queen captures, you will play queen captures and g2 check, you will create a passed pawn, and because you have a so far advanced passed f pawn, you will have resources to maybe draw the game. So that's what kind of a complicated position this is. Unfortunately for Parham, he lost on time, and we will never know what would happen in this position. But I'm pretty sure Parham played a different move. He didn't try to move the queen to a1. He tried something else. I could be wrong. If I figure it out, or if any of you know, do mention it in the comments, or I will mention it in the next video. So yeah, Magnus with an incredible performance, over 3,300. I'm gonna check probably, but I think it's something like 3342, which is insane for a human. That's like an engine-like performance. But yeah, what are you gonna do? He's on 7 out of 7, and he doesn't seem to be slowing down. He says that playing double rounds is brutal. I think he meant for his opponents, but you know, okay. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Magnus just, wins. That's the way chess works. Every day he reminds us of that. We'll see what happens tomorrow. 2 more rounds tomorrow, and then, yeah, I mean, if it's going to be 9 out of 9 and he gets like a 3500 rating performance, we should start looking for a new chess variant, because this makes no sense. So I hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Charles Benjamin Flynn, Diane Schwartz, Ilya Maltsev, Mohammed Babar Khalil, and The Animated Chemist for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, such as this one, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.